This is Mailbag, guys. These are questions and comments that you guys leave on the channel, and I do my humble best to try and answer them, or I feel that they're worthy of an airing on the Mailbag. But before we get started, usual parish notices apply. If you haven't subscribed, why not? Hit the subscribe icon. It's the bell icon if you want to be notified about this sort of content hitting the channel. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And if you consider supporting the channel, pop over to Patreon. The address is down there. Supports the creation of videos on the channel. Also down there is the Facebook and Instagram feeds. That's where notifications, notices, and all the other craziness that I get up to get posted to. So I highly recommend that you go over and tag me on one of those social media accounts. But back to the content of this video. Still live. So the first one in this section comes from Migraine Gain. And he writes in response to the SMR humbled by 1.8k subscribers and details of a giveaway idea, which was beginning of August 2020. The thing about doing this at this time of day is I'm sitting in my little glass box. So there's windows there, and I've got a light there because it's sort of going in and out. And it's all of a sudden the sun's come out. It's been quite sort of grey and overcast all afternoon, but you don't want to know about that. Anyway, Migraine writes, even with aircon, it's hideous in my little studio. All my gear doesn't really heat up, but some of my older groove boxes and keyboards are like space heaters. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they use some sort of nuclear reactor in the old EMX, ESX boxes. And it's true. I mean, none of my stuff at the moment really heats up. I mean, you know, if you put your hand around where the power supply is, which is just there on the keyboard that's in front, and it's sort of kind of around there, you can feel a little bit of warmth. In fact, actually, that's really cool. But this one in front of me warms up a little bit. But if you're sitting surrounded by these things, yes, the cumulative effect means that it is actually quite toasty. And I responded back and said, at least you have aircon. I have natural aircon, I have windows and doors, and I have a through draft that comes through, and it actually makes it quite pleasant in here, even when it has been 30 odd degrees. But you have seen me having to do these videos sitting outside there, because it was just far too hot in here and I was sweating buckets. Anyway, I have a couple of old synths that I don't think have been on camera. In fact, I don't think they've moved from their storage location in probably 20 years. But one of them has a heatsink around the back, sort of around about here somewhere on the keyboard, and there's a physical heatsink there, and it warms all this up. And I actually almost tried cooking an egg on it one day, and then I thought, no, I don't really want to do that because I don't want to be scraping egg out of the keyboard. But it was that hot, you could not touch it. But you know, electronics has moved on. These are old keyboards. In fact, I can't even remember. I know what they look like, but I can't remember what they are. I will have to go to my mum when lockdown finishes. I'll have to go to my mum's and just ferret around in the loft because I know exactly where they are up in their loft, and see what they are. I can't remember the name on them. I can remember they're sort of a 49 note type. It's really bad, isn't it? I can't remember. Honestly, can't remember what they are. I've been racking my brains. But yeah, I thought you could cook an egg on it. It was that hot. And a friend of mine has a little power amp in his studio, and it's sort of down about foot high. And he tends not to do live recording because otherwise this thing would be picked up by the mics. But when he's playing keyboards and what have you, and he's sort of amping up the speakers, this thing blows a nice gentle breeze of warm air over his feet and stops his feet getting cold. But, you know, these old legacy machines, power had to go somewhere. Next one from the same tuber, migraine gain. And again, in response to the SY85, what this beauty can do demonstration sequences I did in August 2020. And he writes, shameless self-plug moment. Track I did on the sister SY85 back in the day. I had to do it in 2 sections and chop them together because I didn't realize you could add a program change events at that point. Sample loops from a couple of third-party discs. There were some literally hundreds available at its peak, plus some drum and synth samples transferred over from via the Yamaha SU10. And to be honest, shameless plug. I've published it on the channel. Shameless plug accepted. Next one comes from XP50 Player. In response to a mailbag I did, bling but no hyphen, missing the 01 Oasis behaving badly video I did again in August 2020. And he writes, the Trinity would not have been a consideration for early 01W Pro X buyers as it came out in 1995. A full 3 years after the 01X Pro X, the 01W was not really the flagship at the time, being cheaper than the still offered T series, containing less ROM, no sample RAM option standard in the T1. None of these had filter resonance, so they were of limited utility regarding the analog emulative sounds. The 01W could approximately this somewhat, but with its never seen again wave shaping curves. The biggest sin of the 01W series was the lo-fi PCM ROM, a cost saving measure used to squeeze more multi-samples into its lesser 6 megabyte size. That's quite a wordy description, and I suppose what I was trying to get across when I said I missed out the 01W is a lot of people have turned around and said, well, you've missed the 01W out, when I did a sort of brief synopsis on a video a little while back. And yeah, I did, and I said I missed it. But then again, I don't regard the 01W as a groundbreaking workstation, much the same as the M1, the T1, the Trinity, the Triton, the Oasis, the Kronos, etc. And I think what I was trying to get across was when they brought out the 01W, it wasn't strong enough to persuade pro musicians to buy it. So, you know, if you had an M1 or a T1, and bearing in mind that both the M1 and T1 were still in production when the 01W hit the streets, there was no good reason for you to chop in your M1 or your T1 for an 01W. It also looked the same in 61 key guys as an M1 and a T3. I suspect that the cases were just adapted for the electronics of the 01W. And if you then went for the 76 note version, that looked like a T2. And if you went for the Pro X version, which was the 88 key version, it looked like a T1. So there was no expense spared on the cases. I think they were just recycled or upcycled from the T manufacturing line. So that was kind of the one of the things. It looked the same as a T1. It wasn't as powerful as a T1. It had some different features to the T1, but it kind of wasn't. There wasn't enough there to make people jump from an M or a T to the 01W. My point about the Trinity was that Korg stated that there was a new unnamed synth in 1993. So 1991, the 01W was launched. 1993, they launched the Pro. I think the Pro was... which was a lot, yeah. The Pro was 92, and late 92 was the Pro X. So that was the 76. The Pro was 76, and the Pro X was the 88 key weighted version, and that was in 1992. And I'm not sure exactly when. I think the Pro came on stream around about June 92, and I think the Pro X was later in the year. But but I can't find any exact references to when. I can find a write up in some magazines referring to indicative dates, but I can't find anything that actually said this arrived then, this arrived then. So that would have hit the market a year before. All of a sudden, Korg started sort of making murmurings about a new keyboard coming to market in '93. Yes, the Trinity didn't arrive until '95, but I think early versions of it were being demoed in '94. So really, the point is the original 01W didn't set the world alight. It wasn't strong enough. By the time you were probably thinking about sort of migrating off your T series or your M series, which the M series didn't actually finish manufacturing until '95 anyway. But if you were thinking of migrating off one of those platforms, if you had your ear to the ground and heard that Korg were doing something more, would you have waited? I probably would have waited until the new thing hit the streets and then look at my options again. Personally, if I had the cash in 1990 and 91, and I was a poor person in 1990, 91, and didn't buy a T series, I think I probably would have bought the Korg Wave Station. And the reason why I would have bought the Wave Station, it was designed by Dave Smith.